On today's episode of OK Local TV, we're visiting our good friends at Firehall Brewery in Oliver, BC, getting a one-of-a-kind behind-the-scenes look at some of the South Okanagan's finest beer and catching up with them on what they have planned for the future.
All right, perfect. Well, welcome to the Firehall Brewery. Yeah, thank you for coming in. This is exciting.
One of our favorite places to come, actually. So I'm pretty stoked to see behind the scenes where all of the delicious beer is made and hear about the process.
Where the magic happens.
As
they say.
Yeah.
As they say.
Boy, do we love beer.
Yeah.
Awesome. As do we.
Yeah.
As do we. Well, my name is Sid, and my wife and I, Mary-Ev and I, we run the brewery these days.
Sweet.
So this is the oldest part of the brewery, going all the way back to 2011, which is not really that far back. But one day, when I say that, people will be like, "Ooh, before I was born," and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the basement of the fire hall. So the building was built in 1948 to be the town's fire station. And down here it was probably just an ugly storage room, and I believe they actually filled fire extinguishers, and there's some public works storage and that sort of thing. It was the fire department until the year 2000, and then by 2002 a new station was built, and my family and some other families invested into this building to make it what it is now, essentially. So they spruced it up and painted it up, and it's gone through a few transitions. It was more focused on wine at first. The Toasted Oak Wine Bar and Grill was the restaurant upstairs back in the day. There was a wine store, and that's kind of when I was first coming of age as a teenager, working as a busboy upstairs. And then, fast forward a few years, this room was sort of like a conference room, dining room. Not a lot of conferences in Oliver, essentially.
Yeah.
So we thought there's probably going to be something better we could do, and a brewery came to mind. It turns out that there's a fellow in Suyas that had got busted for bootlegging, and he had all of this stuff in his basement.
No.
And he was, had to sell his tanks off, basically.
Way.
And so when we heard about that, we went and checked them out, and these were just all in his basement, and well, that'll work.
Yeah.
That'll work for us. It'll fit. As you can see, that it just barely fits, really. Between all the piping and the walls and the concrete columns, it fits pretty snug. So it was meant to be, I would say. So we got to work piping them in here and naming them. We like to add a little bit of a personal touch to everything. The legends, Led, Zeppelin, BB King, squat one over here, Hendrix, and Elton, the mash tun. And as we go on, I'll tell you, show you more of the tanks as we go through.
Awesome.
Put them in here. That was 2011. First beers were 2012, and then it wasn't until 2016 that we actually spread out into this room behind us, which is the beer shop and social. Almost a tongue twister or a sobriety test. You can say beer shop or social quickly enough. Where most people now think of as the brewery when they come to have a beer or have some food or whatever. In a brewery, these three tanks are what's known as the brew house. They're the hot tanks.
Okay.
They are heated by various methods in different breweries. For us, it's steam. We have a steam boiler outside. So the kettle, hot liquor tank, and mash tun get the job done on a brew day. So we were brewing today. So these were all hard at work a couple hours ago. Sometimes I get the feeling like we're working in a submarine or something. There's no windows, but there's just like dials and pressure gauges and valves and steam flying everywhere and alarms going off.
I love it.
Yeah, so we've got a few different beers. They range from light to dark and malty to hoppy.
Yeah.
And the malt, which is barley, mostly, sometimes other grains, but mostly barley. That is responsible for the sugar for the fermentation. That's responsible for the color, the mouthfeel, obviously the flavor. And then the hops are more of a bittering agent. So the hops you could think of it more like pepper on steak. is my analogy. So steak is made out of beef.
Right.
Pepper has a huge influence on steak flavor, but when it's definitely not made out of pepper. You just like sprinkling a little bit on.
Right.
Same idea with beer. It's made of water and barley. That's the meat of it. And then hops kind of get sprinkled in throughout the process. So we mix the barley and the water in this tank. This is the mash tun. So we've got a paddle. For many years was a canoe paddle.
Which is awesome.
We have upgraded to a big soup ladle. So yeah, we get the barley in here with the water, stir it around, and what happens is the starch in the barley breaks down into sugar. And the sugary, watery mix would be the equivalent of grape juice to make wine. You know, you take some grapes, you squish it down, you get some watery sugar mix, the sugar being from the grapes. Same thing from apples to make cider. Beer gets its sugar from barley. And the sugar is the essential ingredient for alcohol. Well, and yeast, of course. Yeast does the work, but what it gets to work on is the sugar. So we essentially convert the sugar from the starch in the barley into something that the yeast can ferment in this tank here. The water, once the water has extracted all the barley sugars out of it, that's called the wort, like the barley juice.
Okay.
We get the wort in the kettle, and that's where we boil it. And boiling does a whole bunch of things like sterilizing it and making some of the proteins fall out that would make it hazy. It's also where we add the hops. And hops are bitter. That's why they're added to beer. If you didn't add something bitter to beer, then it would be quite sweet, actually. Malty would be another way to put it, but too sweet for many people. So they've always added something bitter to beer, you know, throughout time. You know, whether it was juniper berries or yarrow or sticks and herbs, whatever they could find, really. Whatever they could find that was bitter.
Throw in the sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Then they, at some point in time, realized hops are by far the best bittering agent because they have a preservative factor, they taste great, smell great. So the hops go in there, and it's like tea. You know, the hops go in, they come back out though, so it just infuses the bitterness and the flavor into the water. And once that's done, we got to cool it down to add the yeast, because yeast is a living thing, so it doesn't like to be in boiling baths, as just like any living thing. So we cool it down with a heat exchanger, and that's always just full of sanitizer. So we use the freshly boiled wort to purge the sanitizer out, and from that point on, everything has to be just hospital clean. Before that, it has to be clean, but after that, just, you know, next level of cleanliness, you know, just so that when we add the yeast, that's the only microbiology that's in the mix. Right. Because the yeast, you know, is responsible for the beer's flavor. If you get wild yeast in there, or the yeast gets stressed out, or other kinds of bacteria, you just taste it. It's just there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Sometimes people do it on purpose. Like they add a souring bacteria. Same bacteria that makes yogurt. That's how the sour beers are made. Or some kind of Belgian strains of yeast have kind of funky aromas. But for the most part, you know, for the usual beers that people drink on a day-to-day basis, en masse, that's you want it to be nice and clean and crisp and to go according to plan, basically. Once we've transferred the batch through the heat exchanger, it's now room temperature and ready for the yeast. These are the 3 fermenters here. These were the original 2, and we added that one later. And we pitch in the yeast, and the yeast gets to work right away eating the sugar that we extracted from the barley. So once we got the batches in the tanks, then they ferment. It takes about a week, and we let it settle and do a few special things the yeast needs to do to clean up its fermentation mess, so to speak, and just cleans and clarifies everything, settles down. Then we turn on the refrigeration. So the other tanks are the hot tanks. These are the cold tanks. There's just refrigeration tubing on them, and that drops the temperature down to about freezing. The alcohol keeps it from freezing. For example, that tank there was full cooled earlier today, so it's only at 4 degrees.
Okay.
It'll be -2, -1 by the end of the day.
Okay.
So once it's cold in there, all the rest of the yeast and everything settles to the bottom, and then it's ready to be transferred into the cooler. So we transfer the beer, the cold beer, which is beer at this point. It's fermented. It's just flat at that point. We get it into the cooler.
Awesome.
So we've got more tanks in here. The original 2 tanks. We knew we were going to get more, so Carlos began still, and then we knew we had to.
And then go over the corner.
Finish the band.
Yeah.
And then we didn't know what to do for the last one, so we figured that Dylan would be comfortable with these 4, on a stage at least.
Yeah.
So this is where the beer finishes conditioning, cooling, the flavors round out, and they carbonate, and then it's ready to be put into bottles and kegs and shipped off to customers.
Amazing.
Or ourselves. So the beer is done, and then we open the doors. People are thirsty. We roll the kegs over here. Watch
Can
the
you
step
see?
there.
Yeah. I can see
They're all
mostly.
steamed up.
All steamy.
Yeah, exactly. And then we roll it out to the beer shop. The beer shop. The Beer Shop and Social is the full name, which is almost a tongue twister or a sobriety test. You can say Beer Shop or Social quickly enough. This again, to go with the story I was telling before, is this used to be a conference room, and again, not a lot of conferences in Oliver. So we were brewing in the back for a few years, and this was a storage room. There was the piano, a few couches, dirty kegs, clean kegs, that kind of thing. And the idea came up that this probably could be used for better purposes, and it'd be an awesome bar. Wouldn't this be an awesome bar one day? And so we went from there. And so we did a Kickstarter campaign. So a bit of crowdfunding on Kickstarter.com. And the community just came together, showed that they wanted something like this. And we raised the dollars needed to, it was about $15,000 to get a big giant keg fridge, and some tables and chairs, another bar fridge, and a few doodads, stuff like that, just to get up and running. And so that was 2016. So mid 2016 we opened the beer shop, and that totally changed the nature of the business. We went from selling kegs to liquor stores and pubs and restaurants to hosting events and telling people about the beers and pouring flights, and then getting a bit of wine, a bit of cider, and just really expanding from there. And here we are. Yeah, so I can tell you a bit about the beers on the chalkboard over there. And I'll meet you around. We've got all the beers in yellow are our beers. We have got a few guest products at the moment, some cider and some kombucha from up in Kelowna. But
You guys always have some guest beers, hey? Always on.
we try to, yeah, for sure. At first it was through necessity. We just couldn't brew enough in the summertime to keep all our taps full. So that's how it started. Like, oh no, we have no IPA. Call the cannery in Penticton. Hey, you guys got some IPA? Or whatever. And then from there, just people really wanted cider. That's a very important product in the local area.
South Okanagan people
Love their cider. I mean, originally a farming community, orchards everywhere. Cider is really just, a natural product to have around here. So we love that. Same thing with the liquors. Noteworthy gin from the Douglas Distillery. We go through oodles and oodles of that, gin and tonics. And same thing with the tumbleweed from the distillery down in Asturias, and a few other products. And but yeah, I should tell you about the beers.
Yeah, sure.
So we've put them in order of the order you'd want to taste them in if you were to get a flight, light to heavy. Hoser, it's all BC ingredients, which is rare since most barley in Canada is grown in the prairie provinces. There's a little bit growing in North BC, so just enough to make a beer. So there's the Hoser, and then the Backdraft Blonde. It's getting a little bit heavier It's not a heavy beer. It's a nice round, full-bodied blonde ale. The hops are present, but not playing a prominent role. It's a nice, easy drinking beer. That's the best seller there. And then False Alarm Bitter and Stoked Ember, those are brothers, sort of. The Stoked Ember was the first beer we ever brewed, actually. So ESB is extra special bitter, which is old English terminology, essentially meaning a hoppy amber. So it's darker than a pale ale or an English bitter, but like about the same hoppiness, but getting darker in color and in body. So we were brewing this one for years, and then one day my brother and I made a mistake and screwed it up, and the False Alarm Bitter was born, and people loved it, asked us to keep brewing it that way, so we did, and still here. Then the Stop, Hop, and Roll. It took us years to eventually get cool and make an IPA. So, yeah, look at us go. We got an IPA. It's a different IPA though. It's an oatmeal IPA. So there's some oats and a bit of wheat and caramelized barley in the recipe. So it's quite a malty IPA. The hops are there. It's dry hop. There's lots of hop flavor, as there should be in an IPA, but a lot of malt body as well. And then the Holy Smoke Stout. That is another one of our original beers. Stoked Ember and the Stout were our first two. It's a nice dry stout. It's not too heavy. You could drink a couple of them if needed, but it is quite dark. And some of the barley in it is dried the traditional way in Germany over a fire, so it's naturally smoky. We started the food in December 2019, and all the while we were building a dumbwaiter. So that's what this glass chute.
Oh, very cool.
This
Well,
beautiful.
not down anymore.
Exactly. Yes, we had first had a food runner shift, and that person had to run up and down all day long with the food from the kitchen upstairs. So the food gets cooked for us basically on contract by Papa's Firehall Bistro upstairs. And so we've just worked out a unique menu for ourselves that they make. And yeah, once the dumbwaiter was done and we didn't have to run up and down the stairs, a perfectly timed pandemic lockdown came into effect, St. Patrick's Day. So we got to just look at it for a few months, and then exactly, and then at the end of May we got it running up and down once we unlocked. I know that one is full. Well, we love our events for sure. We love live music. We used to do a lot of concerts and jam nights. Jam nights are probably going to need to wait for a vaccine or end of the pandemic, because it just would kill it to not have that social mingling element to it. But yeah, what we're doing now is we've been doing these Saturday patio sessions. We've been bringing in comedians, doing trivia nights. We've always done trivia nights, but now everything's outside and all spaced out and everything. We are planning to keep doing events throughout the fall and the winter, all following the guidelines and everything. But without having outside available because of the weather, we're not exactly sure what we'll do. But we've got some ideas. We've got some propane fire pits ordered. We've got a big tent ordered. And I'm sure we'll be able to figure out something. So on our website, we have an events page, and we just keep all of our events on there.
What's your website?
Firehallbrewery.com. So firehallbrewery.com/events will have the list of events. For example, one event that's not actually here is going to be at the Oliver Theatre, and we're working with the Oliver Theatre and OM, Oliver Music and Promotions, local promoting guy, David Badger. We're bringing in some comedians. Tim Nutt and Glenn Heinrichs is a local comedian, actually, so he'll be part of that for October 24th and 25th. I'm pretty sure are the dates, Friday and Saturday. And yeah, it's gonna be fun.
When the weather's warmer, like during the summer and stuff, you guys have all different kinds of events going on.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Not just what's happening now, but like
yeah, in general.
I love that we can bring kids.
Right. Yeah, I think that being family friendly is pretty important to community in general. Same with being dog friendly. Dogs are a part of a lot of people's families. And all of course on the patio. I mean, people can bring their kids inside. That's okay. But yeah, generally speaking though, once the pandemic kind of is behind us, then I'm definitely looking forward to going back to some kind of normal when we can have, bands, punk bands, folk bands, acoustic, piano, intimate music inside, and rock bands outside, doing a lot of fundraisers and,
That's awesome.
that kind of thing.
I love it.
If you're new to the Okanagan, or you've lived here for years and would love to discover new amazing Okanagan businesses and learn about the incredible people we have in our own backyard, head over to oklocal.ca, where we put together a list of the Okanagan's favorite businesses. Local businesses who have great products, great customer service, and who love nothing more than to do a job right. Remember, oklocal.ca, your source for Okanagan businesses that rock.